Hello, Tara. How are you today?
Hello, my dear. I'm wonderful. I'm so excited for our guest today.
Me too. I've always been a big believer in psychics and spirituality and angels and all that. My grandmother was a huge believer in that, but you kind of are like beyond a believer.
I am. I know that there's a little magic in my family, for lack of a better word, and I have been fascinated and drawn to psychic readings, angel cards, tarot cards since I was 14. That was my first time.
Wow.
And I've had experiences where I've communicated with another plane and I have done readings for people. So it's so part of the fiber of my being that I'm just so excited. It's like Christmas today.
She's been texting me about it all week, like, oh my God, I can't see you. So without further ado, who do we have today?
Well, today, listeners, you're in for a treat. Today on the Well Off podcast, we have Michelle Clare, a psychic medium, an angel communicator, and a 3-time near-death experiencer. Welcome to the Well Off podcast, Michelle Clare.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I have to ask, just when did this begin for you? How did you know you had a gift and how did it start?
Yeah, it started when I was about 12 years old. And at that point in time, my grandfather passed away. And after he passed, I realized that he and I were still communicating. And so I would go to tell my mom what he said, and my mom would look at me and say, well, that's what you think Grandpa would say if he was still here. And so then I started to realize that not everyone was still having an open communication with Grandpa. And really, I just kind of decided to start keeping it to myself because I had no doubt that this was real. But obviously, people around me either were not experiencing it or were not open to it.
And that seems to be the case. I find this a lot with children, much younger than you even, where it's almost like that third eye or that window hasn't closed yet for them and they're very open and receptive, but maybe the adults around them say, oh, no, 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 no. And then they doubt themselves. And I guess that gift goes away. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think that the gift goes away, but we shut it down. So it's a skill that we have and we kind of put it into the dormant file and it stays there. But I believe every soul does have this capability to a certain extent. Now, it's a little bit like doing math. We're not all going to be physicists, but most of us can do the basic stuff to run a life, right? Balance your banking account and all of that. And that's really the true language of our soul, is this eternal connection to God, source, divine, the angels, loved ones. And so, yes, we all have it. And it is something also that we can all build on and grow.
Yeah. So what kind of communication were you having with your grandfather? Like, did you see him? Could you just hear him? What was that like?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting that you ask that. When I was younger, I could see him better than I can now. Now, the way that I work, I don't see spirit as much. I feel the information coming in and I'm translating that into words. But with him, I would have dream visits with him. I would just have a knowing that he was behind me. I could hear his voice at times. And so there were multiple ways that he was connecting.
And real quick, the dream thing. I've heard that if somebody who's deceased comes to you in a dream and speaks to you, that's really them talking to you. And if they are not speaking, but they're just there, or you see them, then you just miss them. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I feel like that's a limiting belief because I think that loved ones will show up in dreams and not say anything. Maybe it's not productive for them to say something at that time for us emotionally. Maybe, it just depends on where you are in your healing journey and your loved one. So even in readings now, I might have a reading where I'm connecting with someone and I'm like, okay, I can feel that grandma is here, but it feels like she's standing 10 feet behind me. She doesn't want to be up front, center and doing the talking, but she's just here to let their loved one know that she's here. So it's really, with spirit world, we love to put human rules on spirit world. They don't play by our rules. They play by their rules, which is very different than what we can imagine.
And so you're a psychic medium, and I think listeners probably have a good understanding of what that means, what a psychic is, what a medium is, but talk about angel communicator for those who may not be as familiar with that.
Right. So in 2 of my near-death experiences, I actually saw angels, and it was something. I was raised Catholic, so I grew up believing in angels and that we had them for help and support. And what has happened with each near-death experience, my abilities have opened up more. And so By the time I had my third near-death experience, what I actually found is that I can do a reading for someone and literally just connect to their angels and get the life guidance and the love and the protection and all of that information coming through for the person.
That's so fascinating. It's just, the whole realm of it is fascinating. And I know, she was saying there's psychic and a medium. You're a psychic medium, you're both. And that's not really common. Either people are a psychic or they're a medium. It's very rare that you find both. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not as common to be both. And they are different. So if you're doing a psychic reading, what you're doing is you're basically reading the person's energy field and what's most likely to come up for them. If you're doing a mediumship reading, what you're doing is you're connecting to a soul on the other side. But we also have connections where I've actually done a reading for a nonverbal autistic child who was still in his body, but his mom brought him to me because it's really mediumship is soul to soul communication. So often we think of it as somebody's had to have left their body, and that's common. But there are times where we communicate with people in comas, we communicate with nonverbal people.
That's interesting.
Very. And so, Michelle, you talk about being a 3-time near-death experience survivor. So what were those experiences and what happened to you spiritually as a result of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first near-death experience happened in April of 2000. And at that point in time, I was in the hospital because my sister-in-law was having a baby. So we went to go visit, and I was talking to her RN, who happened to be my friend from high school in a small world, Tucson, Arizona. So it was pretty small at that point in time. And as I was talking to her, I had a massive seizure, and I had never had one before in my life. I've never had one since then. But I just remember talking to her, and the next thing I know, I am opening my eyes and I am laying with my head in my grandma's lap. And my grandma had passed away a couple years prior to this. And I start to look around, and I'm in this all white room, and the walls appear to be alive and breathing. Each cell or each molecule in them is lit up with love and light from the inside. I remember looking at my grandma and seeing that she looked like the youngest, healthiest version of her that I could remember. It felt timeless. I felt unconditionally loved. And when I say that, it's a little bit of an overused term. So I guess I would detail it more by saying it was as though I was completely understood and perfect exactly the way I was. That's what the unconditional love felt like.
What a beautiful experience.
Yeah. And as I was laying here in this bliss with my head in my grandma's lap, I looked up next to her and I noticed that there was this 12-foot angel who was huge and magnificent. And I remember being surprised because I believed in angels. I just had no idea they were that big. And as I looked at this angel, I wanted to see what her wings looked like because, we all know they have feather wings. So as I looked, I found that her wings were actually made of light. And they were iridescent, translucent. They kind of moved like the aurora borealis, and they really seemed to almost span eternity. She was stunning, stunning. And I remember thinking to myself, what is your name? And she answered me in my head. She said, my name's Madeline, and I'm one of your guardian angels. I was surprised. I did not know about telepathic communication at this point in my life. I had been married a couple years. I was around 24 years old. So all of this wasn't, available for me to know. And I wasn't raised in that way. But as I was in this energy with her and my grandma, I remember being in no hurry to leave. I didn't actually care if I ever left or not. I mean, this was amazing. And then the next thing I know, I hear someone yelling, code, code, code. And I'm shoved back into my body. It was kind of like jumping out of a 2-story building. And I remember feeling like I went from a feather to a huge block of cement is the difference in the density between where I was and what I came back into. And so I had quit breathing during this seizure. And since I was in the hospital, they were already calling the code team.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I'm afraid to think of what would have happened if you weren't there.
I know.
Frightening. How frightening. And so then you had 2 more experiences after that.
Yes, I did. So my next one was in May of 2006, so about 6 years later. And at this point in my life, I have a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and an infant. My son was 6 weeks old. So after I had him, I had a lot of complications, and I had been in the hospital the majority of 4 of the 6 weeks on IV antibiotics and running fevers. So they decided they were going to do a DNC to clear out my uterus, and that it would be an outpatient procedure, 45 minutes, piece of cake, and that would take care of my problems. So the night before, I remember just having a pit in my stomach and thinking I shouldn't go through with this, but I was so tired of being in the hospital and being sick. So I pushed myself to do this. The next day, I talked to the anesthesiologist and the doctor, and they said, oh yeah, piece of cake, it'll be easy. I had had anesthesia before, and whenever I've had it, it's just a blank for me. There's not a dream. There's not a memory. There's really nothing that is happening. So I counted backwards for the anesthesiologist, and the next thing I know, I am laying on the gurney in the operating room, and I look over and I see my beautiful 102-pound white German Shepherd who had passed away a couple years before walk into the operating room, lay her head on my gurney, take a look at me, and we were gone. And the next thing I knew, we were on this phenomenal beach. Once again, there are colors here that we didn't have or we don't have here on Earth. There were smells, sounds, emotions, everything was radiating light and love from the inside out. So every drop of water, every molecule in every flower, every piece of sand. And she and I are on this beach, and I'm looking at her. She looks like she's about 2 years old. Her coat is shiny. She's, thick and healthy. And we're telepathically communicating again. And she's happy that I'm there. We are running and running on this beach. And I start to become aware that the sand doesn't feel like beach sand. It feels more like I'm running on clouds. We're not getting hot or tired or thirsty. And the funny thing about this near-death experience is that I personally hate to run. So me running on a beach in like heaven is...
Me too.
Yeah. Like, I will tell my friends or neighbors, if you see me running, like, call 911. That is not me going to a job.
100%.
Something is wrong.
On the same team.
But here I am, and we are just having the most amazing time and telepathically communicating. And as I'm on this beach with her, I start to realize that my son, who was at the house with my mom at that point in time, 6 weeks old, was getting scared because he knew I was getting ready to leave him. And I am drawn to him. And I remember going to him and saying, Josh, I'll find a way to stay. I'm not going to leave you. And I did not know what to do. So I started praying and I started saying, I need help. It's not my time. My kids still need me. And at that point in time, I was transported back into the operating room and I saw Jesus came in. And I had always grown up believing in Jesus.
Whoa, what?
But Jesus walked in as my best friend. Jesus walked in, not pray to me, confess your sins, beg me for mercy. None of that. Jesus walked in as my best friend saying, I am here to help you. And the next thing I know, I see the operating room light up in this beautiful white golden light, and I'm waking up in the post-op. As I looked at the clock, I realized that my 45-minute procedure had turned into a 3.5-hour emergency surgery because they had ruptured my uterus in multiple places and missed an artery by a millimeter.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Awful.
Yeah. And so at that point, I didn't know what to do with this. Much like my first near-death experience, I went back to my normal life. I didn't have a box I could put it in. Google wasn't out in 2000. I wasn't Googling. It was out, but it was limited, right? I didn't have the term near-death experience. And in the second one, the same thing. I was in the hospital on IVs because the infection got pushed into my body. So by the time I finally get out of the hospital, it takes me 4 months just to get back to 80%. So although these experiences are more real and more vivid than our daily life, I had nowhere to put what had happened. And so I would just shove it behind me and get busy being mom.
Of course. For sure. And so just those two experiences alone are just so extraordinary. Now there's a third.
I know. What happened? How does this happen 3 times?
Yeah. Well, this is what I would say. The universe is always giving us opportunities to wake up. And I do think that I was given multiple opportunities that could have been much easier to take than any of the near-death experiences. But really, by the time I get to the third one, that is the one where I am given the wake-up call. And so for the third one, people who like numbers, that happened on 11/1/11, so November 1st, 2011.
She's all into numbers.
Yeah.
I love numbers. I love
Me
numbers.
too.
As I was in this house that I lived at the time, it had 14-foot ceilings, and about 12 feet off the ground, I had battery operated candles, and every night they would just turn on, glow for 4 or 5 hours and turn off. My younger 2 kids were home. At this point in my life, I have a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And I said to them, after I put this candle up, we're going to go get your sister from school. As I climbed up towards the top of the ladder, I felt it start to shift. And I immediately thought, this is going to hurt. At that moment, I was ripped out of my body, not in a painful way, but think fast, think bungee cord fast, think it was just immediately ripped out of my body, standing with these 3 people that I did not know, but they felt like family, friends. I knew they knew me inside out. One was an Asian man, one was an Egyptian woman, and one was a Hawaiian man. And as I stood there with them, what I realized was I was once again back in this timeless space. I felt the unconditional love. And as I looked, I could see my body and the ladder suspended in the air. It was like the freeze frame, a freeze frame in a movie. And I remember thinking, my body's going to hit the floor in a second or less. And at that point, they said to me, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay or do you want to go? And after they said that, I saw this beautiful angel, different than the first near-death experience, come in. And this angel was dressed in this very deep red and gold. The moment that I saw this angel, I knew it was either here to take me home or to shift something so that I could stay longer. And then at that moment, I was kind of thinking, I just remember being like, how is this working? Like, how do I have forever to decide when I understand that my body's about to hit the floor? And then I saw my younger 2 kids. And as I saw my 2 kids in the kitchen, I made that decision that I needed to stay. As I made this decision, I was absolutely downloaded with information from God, source, whatever the word is for the higher power. And it really came across like this. It said, okay, but if you stay, you have to start doing your work as a medium and you have to help people in the way that you can help them. And they gave me a long line of things that were going to happen. They said, your marriage will most likely end in divorce. You have more trauma coming. So there was, it wasn't like there was a rosy picture being painted. It's going to be all rainbows and unicorns. No, it was very real about what was going to be coming in my life. And yet in that heavenly realm, I absolutely remember saying, okay, send me back. As I fall off the ladder, the back of my head hit the corner of the granite island in the kitchen. So I had a 5.5-inch skull fracture, brain bleed, lost my taste, my smell, my hearing, and my equilibrium. But what they found later at the hospital was that I had literally survived the fall by 1/2 inch because I had missed my brainstem by 1/2 inch. And that was the difference.
So basically, they could have shifted you one way or the other. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm like riveted right now.
Me too. Unbelievable. And here you are. So after that, Michelle, that's when you knew what your mission was.
Yeah. So I did have an understanding of what had happened, but I had so much traumatic brain injury from that fall that it really took me quite a while to even process that. I literally couldn't even sit up because of the vestibular damage and everything that had happened. And so that was November 1st, the end of January 2012. I had a memory. I knew that this had happened. I was just literally in survival mode. There was no way around it. End of January, my son, who was 5 at the time, he had tried to call 911 when I had this accident, but we believed his call did not go through. So at this point, I'm out of the hospital and I'm obviously home and doing better. My grandfather, who had passed away when I was 12, came through to me in this huge visit. He looked at me and I said to him, I said, "It's been so long since I've seen you." And he said, "I knew it would seem like that to you." Because this is how it is with spirit world. We think it's been so long since we've seen them and they're connected to us all the time. But during that conversation with my grandfather, he talked about my accident and my head injury, and he talked about my son being good with electronics. My grandfather and my son never lived on this earth at the same time. So he was just showing me that he knew he existed.
Yeah.
And before this ended, he said to me, "You need to get the 911 recording. There's something on there you should know." I did not even know I could get the 911 recording. So I ordered it. It took a couple weeks to come in, and it came in with 2 calls on it. And the first one I put it in, and they said, "911, what's your emergency?" And my son Josh, in his little broken voice, said, "Sophie, what do I say?" And he laid the phone down. And then you can hear for a minute and a half 911 trying to get their attention. You can hear the kids talking in the background. And my son says, "I'm going to push the panic alarm on the house." And she says, "Hold on, let me try calling 911. My daughter's call, she hangs up the phone, redials 911, and it goes through to a different operator at the time. And at that point in time, this was a really big deal because my son had been feeling depressed, like he hadn't helped me. He would tell my mom, my mother-in-law, "I did nothing to help Mom." We would say, "But you opened the door for the policeman. You let him in." So this life-changing information that my grandfather brought through to me was something that I did not even know was available. And when he came home from kindergarten that day, and I told him, I said, "Josh, your 911 call went through. Help was coming." It was like lifting a 10,000-pound weight off a 5-year-old boy. You could immediately see his self-worth just flooding back into him because he had helped me.
Wow. It's incredible.
That's remarkable. I mean, Michelle, I know Gina and I have made it very clear that we're believers. Obviously, you're here for a reason because we want people to hear from people like you. But what do you say to non-believers that are like, "Oh, there's no way," or
This is fake. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're making it up. Like, how do you convince them?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a point in my career where I thought I might need to convince them, but now I don't. I don't need to convince anyone. I think that everyone here on planet Earth is here living their soul's plan, and some of them have chosen to come believing this isn't possible, and that's perfectly fine for exactly who they are. So it's not something that I engage with. You know, it's just not. One of the things that I personally have done is I've become a certified medium. With that, what you do is you have 5 blind readings. So they would just say, "Log on to Skype Wednesday at 11." And you get on there, you have a blank screen, and you start giving someone on the other side the information that you're getting, and they're scoring you. And with that, what happens then is there's no way of knowing who's on the other side of the blank screen or where they are in the world or who their loved ones in spirit are. So I've done that to just give myself some credibility behind what I already know. And I think we have about maybe 40 mediums on the Find a Certified Medium website. So we know that everyone on there has been vetted. I know this is real, but it's not my job to convince people who are skeptical. I would just say this: be skeptical, but be open-minded. How would somebody know that your grandma always used to cut up cantaloupe in a bowl and feed it to you as your secret snack? You can't Google that, you know? So
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
just being open-minded, go ahead and be skeptical. This is part of the challenge with psychics and mediums. We don't have any type of governing board. There's nobody, you know, so there are people across the board. There have been people who have faked it over the years. And that is part of the challenge. But yeah, be skeptical, but be open-minded.
I think that's great advice. And,
Yeah.
you know, in my lifetime, anyone I've known that was some sort of, you know, rabid rebel that was like, "No way, it's fake," something always seems to shift in their lives that make them either not maybe wholehearted believers, but something that makes them be a little bit more
Kind of believe.
open or question.
Yeah, so I've done a couple studies for them, and really what they do is they hook me up to the head and heart monitor and are monitoring me while I'm connecting with spirit. And what they're doing is they're seeing where our brain waves are, what our body's doing while we're connecting with this external consciousness. It's really been fascinating. I've also done some studies here in Phoenix too with that. And what I have been told and seen from the results is that when my brain is in either theta or delta state, that's when I'm getting the most hits. So delta, as we know, is the sleep state, but I am sitting there wide awake, talking just like I am to you right now. And what you can see on the brain waves is they look like spikes, and it drops down. I get the information, spikes back up as I share it to the person. So I'm doing this within seconds for the whole reading.
So kind of coupling off of Tara's question, there is science that backs this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And IONS, or Institute of Noetic Sciences, has a lot. Dr. Gary Schwartz in Tucson, Arizona at U of A has a lot. Duke University has a whole department to this. So there is a lot of science. The thing with science is science likes the answers. And like we started in the beginning, we're playing with spirit world, or we're talking to spirit world. And that doesn't always work by what our human mind wants to see as a nice, clean answer.
Absolutely.
And I mean, the work that you do, Michelle, requires you to open yourself up, right? To give yourself to the space for another person. So how do you kind of zip that back up and regroup and invest?
Turn off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is a great question, because I have had so many people say, like, what are you getting on me? Are you reading me? And when you're just walking through the grocery store or something like that, most mediums that I know, actually all the mediums I know, we're not walking around on all the time, because imagine trying to get through the grocery store if everybody's grandma and angels and their dog and, their neighbor and everyone is with them. I like to think of it as a radio analogy. The way that I do my work is each channel represents something different. We have the angels on 111, life guides on 112, grandma on 103. When I'm working, I go in and I turn that volume up and I open up my energy field, and I'm like, all right, universe, let me know what this person needs to hear. I always go into it very open. I do not know what my sitter is going to need, but their angels, their loved ones, their life guides, that's where the information comes from. So as I do that, I'm really opening myself up to the information that is going to help them navigate their life the best. But when I'm not in the reading space, I turn that volume down. If spirit has to get my attention, they will absolutely still find a way to do that.
Hey.
But it's just not productive to think of mediums walking around in this world. Each of us has our own spirit teams. Every human on this planet has angels, life guides, loved ones in spirit, right? Imagine actually how many beings are holding the space on this planet right now when you think of everyone and everyone that's on their team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can relate to that, because when I meet people in social settings, they'll ask me if I'm diagnosing them. Am I psychoanalyzing them?
I am guilty of asking her that. I was like,
Yes,
so are you analyzing me right now?
And I'm like, honey, I'm off the clock.
You're processing my traumas.
Yeah. So I totally get that. So how do you take care of yourself? Do you have any practices to keep yourself healthy and in a space of wellness to do this work?
Absolutely. For me, I'm really always open to spirit and getting guidance from them. Obviously, I think eating well and exercising is important. I do not believe that it has to be a specific diet. I think all of our bodies are built differently. And so I've seen amazing mediums who are vegan and on keto. So I don't believe it has.
So it doesn't matter what you eat.
I'm not worried about that as long as it works for your body, right? Yeah, there really is a body, mind, and spirit well-being. And for me, I'm always thinking about being in alignment. So I want to talk about that mentally and emotionally, really. When we have throughout the day thoughts that come in that don't feel good, we're getting options to, let's just say somebody cuts us off in traffic. We can be really mad and let that ruin our morning, or we can say, obviously they're running late. Maybe there's an emergency. They needed to cut me off. Maybe they never saw me. But right there, we have the ability to help ourselves stay in alignment, or to go down a rabbit hole that's not going to be productive. So alignment would be my word for taking care of myself. But that goes along with what I'm eating, because what I'm eating, what I'm thinking, and how I'm exercising, it's all about being in alignment.
Love that.
Yeah. For sure. And, we always ask our guests here what well off means to them because it means something different to everyone. So what does that mean for you?
Yeah, well, for me, it's really about, I would just say this. Are you happy? Are you happy in your life where it is today at this moment? This is not like the final finish line where we all are. And so we're all allowed to still have goals and dream and get to the next stop. But well off is valuing the present moment because this moment is your life. I can worry about tomorrow, but tomorrow is going to find a way of taking care of itself. That's a problem for future Michelle. So it's really that. It's really about being happy in the present moment. It doesn't mean everything's perfect, but it means you're giving yourself permission to be happy.
For sure.
Yeah, that's great. That's kind of how I think of it too, as far as being happy. How can, if somebody's interested in talking to you or doing a reading, how can they find you? I know you share a lot of good insights on your Instagram. Tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me at my website, michelleclare.net, and it's Clare. And there you'll be able to, I have online group readings, individual readings. I do some in-person events here in Phoenix. I have a course on connecting with the angels coming out in February, 4-week course so that people can start doing it for themselves. And yeah, that's the easiest way.
How wonderful.
Yes.
I'm so tempted to ask you a spur of the moment question for either Gina or I, for our listeners' sake, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
Is it a psychic question?
Gina, you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you see for the Well Off podcast?
Okay. Well, hold on. I gotta, so
Turn it on. Let me turn it on.
I was thinking about your love life, but okay.
We can do that too.
One of them will be more juicy than the other.
Let's do the love life one. Let's do the love life.
The love life one. Gina, when was the last time you were in a relationship?
2.5 years ago.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, and you can probably actually see this, I'm having to switch gears in my brain because now I'm going into reading mode, not interview.
Sorry.
No, you'll literally, you can see the difference. So that's why I'm saying that, because sometimes it's what always happens. Okay. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Oh, wow. Okay. So your guides just came in and they said, tell her 2025 is her year. This is going to be a year for you where actually it's not just going to be about love, but they're bringing in the podcast too. That's weird. The video. So something about videos. So it's not just going to be this podcast, but I don't know if you're going to start creating videos or where the videos are going to be coming in, but I need to acknowledge that. And they're telling me that this is the year that the pieces start clicking together for you. So up until now, you might have been like, oh, they're saying frustrated. I'm doing the work. Why isn't it happening? There's kind of that in the energy field. But just know that this is the year that it feels like with the podcast, with your love life, and whatever these videos or these other ways that you're talking is coming out, this is the year that it all clicks for you. Mm-hmm. I actually expect that you will. I think you're going to meet this person before June or around June because they're giving me the number 6. So that I think of that as the 6th month. Now, that doesn't mean don't date or whatever until then, because I think you're still supposed to be energetically putting yourself out there. But what they're calling this for you is the fine tuning phase. So you've done the work, right? This is like sprinkling, whatever, the seasoning on the steak. The big part has been done. This is the final touches as you get ready to step into who you are. And actually allowing what they just said for who you're going to be. Because I do think that when you find this partner, it will change you in a good way, because you're going to say, I would have never let myself do that before, but guess what I did? But there's going to be an allowing. This is the big part about this partner for you. Ooh, they're giving me goosebumps. The big part about this partner for you is you're going to allow. Did you feel? I know, because this is huge. You're going to. Yeah, you're going to allow yourself to do and be and say someone you've never allowed before.
Okay. I love that.
I'm telling her that, Michelle, just saying.
Thank you, Michelle. All right.
Michelle, you're amazing. Thank you for allowing us to put you on the spot and for just sharing that with our listeners. And I hope they appreciate it. And if there are any non-believers, I hope we change their mind a little bit today. Yeah. But you're a beautiful soul, and we're so grateful for you to come here and share your story with us. You look like an angel right now.
You really do. You're beautiful. I mean, if you're just listening, you have to look on on Instagram. She's beautiful.
Yes.
No,
But
thank
keep shining your light. And we're all here to share our gifts. So thank you for sharing yours.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And right back at you both. You're both beautiful lights, and thank you for helping to make this world a better place.
Amen.
You too. Thank you
Bless
so
you.
much.